You probably heard that Melania Trump had a kidney operation last month. That kind of thing happens to 48-year-olds, even famous ones. She took a few weeks to recover, stayed off TV, didn't give any speeches, all pretty typical for someone who just got out of the hospital. But over at CNN, they were not buying that story. They are proud journalists at CNN, self-consciously proud. And if there's one thing they know for certain, one thing that was drummed into them at the top-shelf journalism schools they attended, it's that Republican first ladies lie a lot and are evil and for the sake of civilization must be destroyed. So CNN did not buy a word of that, and the network assigned its most dogged journalist to crack the case, the squeaky but persistent Brian Stelter, who hosts some kind of weekend show that no civilian television viewer has ever actually seen. Stelter understood immediately that the whole kidney operation story was just a cover for something darker and more sinister, likely another international scandal emanating from that dark lord Vladimir Putin himself. Stelter hinted as much to his viewers. Watch.
One thing that the president and the White House have been quite quiet about is Melania Trump and her status. The last time we caught a glimpse of her was on May 10th, 24 days, more than 3 weeks. There's been a lot of questions about her surgery, her time at Walter Reed, and now her invisibility.
Questions about her surgery? Questions about her time at Walter Reed? What questions exactly? Who's asking those questions? Brian Stelter didn't say because he couldn't say. Those are not real questions, and this is not reporting. It's a passive-aggressive attack. CNN's real point was that Melania Trump is a liar, and she's doing something immoral. She must be. Look who she's married to. Stephen Colbert came to the same conclusion. Watch.
As of the time we're taping this show right now, the First Lady has not been seen in public for 25 days. Well, I'm not surprised. It took that Shawshank guy years to tunnel out. Melania is supposedly re-emerging to attend an event in the White House tonight, but who can be sure? Because the event will be closed to the press. But the White House did release this official photo proving the First Lady was totally there.
Over at Rolling Stone, which apparently still exists, someone called Jamil Smith speculated that Melania Trump was in hiding to conceal signs of physical abuse. At The Atlantic, David Frum agreed and then suggested that the president may have punched Melania and then ordered the Secret Service to cover it up. Keep in mind that once upon a time, David Frum was a serious intellectual, or what passed for one in Washington. Now he's merely a buffoon. And even more buffoonish as of last night, when the actual Melania Trump showed up at the White House for a veterans event, very much alive and unscathed. So much for all those questions Brian Stelter pretended to care about. What's so interesting about all of this is how much journalists hate Melania Trump. Imagine hating Melania Trump. Whatever else she is, Melania Trump is not an overbearing public figure. She's not lecturing you about your weight or trying to control your personal life. She doesn't weigh in on, I don't know, tax rates or global warming. It's unlikely she will run for Senate from New York when this is all over. Nobody thinks she's one of her husband's key political advisors. You may never even have heard Melania Trump's voice. Many people haven't. She doesn't talk much in public. Melania Trump has done absolutely nothing wrong to you or anyone you know or anyone you will ever meet. She married Donald Trump. That is her only sin in the eyes of the press corps, and yet it's enough to disqualify her even from the most basic consideration of decency. Here, for example, is super-sensitive modern guy comedian Jimmy Kimmel making fun of her accent, which he thinks is silly and foreign-sounding. Alien, really.
I'm curious, just like a cat. Ask lots of questions about this and that.
About this and that.
So do you think Kimmel would be okay mocking the accent of one of his many Guatemalan housekeepers? How about of an MS-13 member? Please, that'd be racist. But Melania? Well, she's Trump, therefore she's guilty. There was a time when the left used to argue that people ought to be judged for what they do, not for whom they're related to. We're all individuals, liberals were forever telling us, and thank God they were. Collective punishment is wrong. It is immoral. That's what they said. Did they ever really believe that? Who knows, but they definitely don't believe it now. Mark Penn was an advisor to President Clinton. Tammy Bruce is a New York radio show host. They both join us now. First to you, Tammy. What do you make of I mean, just to be totally clear, I never typically defend the honor of politicians. In fact, as a rule, I don't. But Melania Trump's not a politician. Why are they attacking her? What does she have to do with it?
You know, in large part, it's because they're jealous and they're envious. Here you've got a woman who has power. She has influence. She's perfectly lovely. She's smart. She speaks 5 languages. Yes, she married a man that they don't like. But she has access now to everything that they now do not have access to. They used to be the ones who would be fawned over, who would be looked to for power and for appointment and for credibility. Now it's a woman who never really cares about them, has gone to certainly some cocktail parties, but it doesn't care about what the elite in Washington necessarily thinks or says. She cares about her son, she cares about her family, she cares about her parents, and that's her crime as well. But keep in mind, of course, this is for every woman who has dared to be part of this administration. And this is where, when you talk about the hypocrisy of the left, is the attacks on these women are misogynistic. And look, let me say about the attacks on the First Lady in particular, when they talk about her either being beaten by the president or hiding in Walter Reed or having to secrete herself away, it presumes that she's a victim, that she's helpless, that she is not willing to take care of her own life. That kind of misogyny is an insult not just to the First Lady, but for women who do experience violence and domestic violence. And yet these are the people who are supposed to be the champions for women. The fact of the matter is that the arguments about championing women come from, at this point, from the center-right argument that women are individuals, that they're smart, that the First Lady is an example of a powerful woman living a life that best suits her. And she should be lauded for that.
Well, yeah, I mean, she certainly never bothered anybody. Mark Penn, what I find so interesting about this, I'm trying to imagine the conversation where Jeff Zucker over at CNN calls up his sad little errand boy that's dealt her kid and says, go ahead and attack, it's time to attack Melania, okay? And I'm thinking, if you really think that it's appealing to attack Melania Trump, of all people you could attack, Melania Trump, your judgment has been distorted.
Well, it's not politically smart right now. If you look at the last CNN poll, she was at 57% favorable. She had 53% of the women favorable to her, much higher percentage of men because men are more Republican. But that means that you don't want to attack Melania because you're attacking the voters that you need. And they probably see this as a kind of wrong idea because no one uses silence better than Melania Trump. And that silence, you see, now has all of America waiting to tune in tomorrow when she reappears on the scene. So politically, given her ratings, it's not a very smart thing for columnists and others who have embarked on this.
You sort of ran the political operation at the White House for a long time, and you used data to do it, heavily used data. When people become so emotional and when a political cause becomes a moral cause, pretty hard for them to make rational decisions, isn't it?
Well, I think that's right. I think that a lot of what we see today is about getting back to rationality in our politics. Now, Hillary Clinton, as First Lady, endured a lot of attacks when she went into health care and controversial issues. But when she went to It Takes a Village, the country united. Melania Trump is not in controversial issues. She's trying to help kids. She's doing those things that the country can agree upon. So it doesn't make sense.
So I guess what I dislike about this whole thing, Tammy, is the way that the left has framed everything as a moral divide. So it's like nothing about Trump can be good, and everything that is against Trump must be good. That seems like an inherently insane way to look at the world.
Well, it is. In and of itself, it's immoral. But let me say also that the attacks on the First Lady are personal. We can talk about Hillary getting into policy. That's fine. Let's deal with policy issues. But remember also, the attacks on the First Lady, I would contend, are because attacks on the president don't work. And I think that there's an inherent decision here to destroy his base of support. And that is why I think she has now been targeted. Clearly, she's a strong woman. She knows what's going on here. The media tries to infantilize her, but she's going to stick to with what matters to her: children's lives and supporting her son and her family. So this is the irony of what it is, of course, that the media is doing and what maybe even some of the establishment is doing, which is claiming that Donald Trump is immoral, and then they move and do every single thing that they try to project onto the president, which is that he's bad for women, he treats women badly, he doesn't respect them, and yet every single thing they're doing reveals that that's what the
I know
media
the irony
does.
bomb has just gone off once again. Mark, you don't think it's going to work though as a political matter?
I think this will be over tomorrow. She'll be back. I think she has actually gotten more astute about handling the office of First Lady, and you saw that in her rise. Donald Trump's at about 40% favorable, and she's at 57. The very few people in the country now who can break 50 were so polarized.
Yeah,
Great
maybe
point.
she should run from New York. Thank you both. Tammy, Mark, appreciate it.
Thank you.